New York City was the epicenter for hip-hop culture since the beginning, but after around 30 years, the genre migrated south. Of course, artists like Jay-Z and Nas remained at the top of the game, but when it came to new artists coming out to push the genre forward, New York seemed to always be a step behind. In the early 2010s, while some New York artists like A$AP Mob embraced the sound of the South, a few groups embraced their East Coast heritage, forming the Beast Coast movement. The Beast Coast was made up from a few groups: the Underachievers, the Flatbush Zombies, and my personal favorite, Pro Era. When they first came out, Pro Era was lauded as the future of New York. As the self-named progressive era, they were making music that called back to the golden age of hip-hop while progressing it into its next stages. Looking back 10 years later, the group never really lived up to the high expectations that we all had for them. The Pro Era artists made a lot of great music, but the movement itself didn't make the progressive imprint on the culture like it seemed they were destined to. You cannot tell the story of Pro Era without first discussing the late, great Capital STEEZ. Stilo was the heart and soul of Pro Era. Not only was he one of the group's founders, but it's his mind and lyrical prowess that served as the foundation that Pro Era was built on. STEEZ started rapping when he was 15 years old, under the name J STEEZ. He formed the rap duo The Third Kind with his childhood friend Jack DeRimer, releasing their first mixtape, The Yellow Tape, in 2009. In the spring of 2011, STEEZ had a performance in a cafe in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn. His friends and future group mates Joey Badass, Dirty Sanchez, and Powers Pleasant were enjoying the show, and it was on their way home that Capital STEEZ and Powers Pleasant came up with the idea of starting a collective. The Progressive Era was formed that night, and the two brought in their friends Joey Badass, Dirty Sanchez, and CJ Fly to form the main core of Pro Era. They were all in high school at the time, and had this youthful energy to them. They were a group of friends and they felt like it, getting high and listening to underground rap together. They had an aura that fellow teenagers across the world could relate to. The group had a knack for branding as well, with their iconic logo and the classic 47 that was always present in what they do. The 47 represents the perfect balance. The fourth chakra is the heart, and the seventh chakra is the brain. STEEZ was the brainchild behind this, and once he put it together, he started seeing the number everywhere. At one point the group even said that there were 47 members of Pro Era. I'm not sure if that number was ever official, but I'm gonna do my best to give you a rundown of a bunch of their members here. Capital STEEZ is the king author of the group. He's the thinker behind everything that the group is, and he had one of the most impressive pen games that a teenager ever has. Joey Badass quickly became the star of the group, and the face of the franchise for better or worse. He had an immediate it factor that not only made him a standout of the group, but one of the most respected rappers of last decade. CJ Fly was the oldest member of the group, and on top of being the group's big brother, he's also one of the most reliable songwriters of the bunch. Dirty Sanchez is another MC who does a little bit of everything for the group, always bringing his explosive personality on the mic. Powers Pleasant, like I said, was one of the founders of the crew, and he was the original DJ and producer of the bunch, laying the sonic foundation for what all of these MCs would be doing. Chuck Strangers lived a block away from Joey, and randomly met him on the street one day. Then before he knew it, he was a part of the movement too. And to this day, he's one of the most reliable producers in the underground. And he raps too. Kirk Knight is another MC producer who always brought his A game as the jack of all trades, who was able to switch up his styles at will. Nick Caution was the white guy of the crew, but what he lacked in melanin, he made up for with some of the rawest raps of the group. Desi Hines was one of the most enlightened writers of the bunch. A La Soul was the group's hothead on the mic, always bringing his attitude, and Rockamouth always brought the flows. Diamond Lewis and Rawl came into the group as the duo Super Slackus. Dime always brought the smoothest of flows, and Rawl, who also went by Swankmaster Rawl, always brought the chaotic energy. And Jack DeRimer was another slept-on wordsmith of the crew. J.A.B., who's also known as Ali, is yet another slept-on MC of the crew, and Tina Apex was one of the most talented rappers of the bunch, blending rapping with singing and her beautifully unique vocals. And not all of the Pro Era members were musicians either. It was much more of a cultural movement, on top of being just a rap group. Junior B was Joey's cousin, and acted as the manager and publicist for the group. True was a creative strategist for the group. Tony Wellen was an art director. Quan Swank was another one of Joey's cousins who was an actor. Sir Niles was a designer and producer. And there was D Nose, who was a photographer and art director. Even though I'm naming so many of the group's members, I'm sure I'm still missing a few of them. This village mentality of Pro Era membership helped bring out the creativity of each of their members, and made the group unique. But it also made it hard for fans to latch on to the crew and become attached to each member. In 2012, Pro Era signed with Cinematic Music Group, and shortly after they released their debut mixtape called The Sex Tape. This project showcased the group's chilled out but provocative style. The lyrics were mature even though most of the group's members were still in high school, and their sound was more refined than it ever had the right to be. More than anything, this project does such a great job of highlighting each member of the crew, giving every person a chance to shine and showcase what they are capable of. This is really the first and only time that Pro Era was a group first, because the solo albums would start coming out soon after. Capital STEEZ released American Corruption in April of 2012. While it wasn't an immediate hit, the mixtape announced Capital STEEZ as one of the most thoughtful and interesting writers of the next generation of hip-hop. On the project, he raps over some of the best underground hip-hop beats from the previous decade, and carves his own legacy right next to what the original rappers did. His lyrics range from government conspiracy to love, and each of his words are put together with the cleverness of someone who has been rapping for decades. A couple months later, Joey followed that up with his own debut mixtape, 1999. This was an instant classic of the era, with Joey capturing the essence of 90s New York hip-hop, while giving it a new age attitude. He showed the same fire with his words that STEEZ did, but where STEEZ was more of an introspective writer, Joey's delivery is what made him special. This tape made Joey Badass an immediate superstar, and left him as the poster boy of Pro Era. On December 21st, the group released their second mixtape together, Peep the Apocalypse. This mixtape built on the group's chemistry from the Sex Tape, and expanded on the variety that the group brings, with each member of the group adding their own flair to the project. For those who were there at the time and truly tapped in, this was a classic mixtape of the era. Tragically, just a few days later, Capital STEEZ took his own life by jumping from the roof of the Cinematic Music Group headquarters. Capital STEEZ was one of the most promising young artists in music, and his light touched thousands of people all across the world. May he rest in peace. 2012 was a triumphant year for Pro Era, so ending the year in tragedy left the group in a weird place. Capital STEEZ was the heart and soul of the group, and he was the reason why many of the group's members were even involved together. His passing did bond the group together, as much of what they would make moving forward would be dedicated to him, but the group's dynamic would be changed forever. In 2013, the group kept it pushing as best they could, doing a ton of touring all throughout the year. Joey Badass released his second mixtape, Summer Nights, further evolving his sound, and CJ Fly released The Way I See It later in the year, solidifying himself as one of the group's most important members outside of Joey and Stilo. On Valentine's Day of 2014, the group released The Sex Tape 2. Even though it was only a little over a year after their great 2012, this tape didn't garner a lot of attention at the time, and it seemed like the group had already lost the juice. They released the Shift EP just a few months later, and it would be the last Pro Era project that would ever come out. The group continued to tour through 2014 until the passing of Junior B, Joey's cousin, in December. May he rest in power along with STEEZ. In 2015, Joey Badass released his official debut album, Before the Money, and it was followed by a few more Pro Era solo records that year. Kirk Knight released Late Night Special, and Powers Pleasant released The Powers Pleasant Experience, which both were pretty dope projects. And that brings me to the next reason why Pro Era peaked so early. By 2015, Joey Badass had already released 4 projects, but the rest of the members were just getting ready to release their first, so the buzz that the group had in 2012 had dissipated, and most fans by then only had the time and attention to follow 1 or 2 artists from the group. In 2015, they also formed Pro Era Records, changing the dynamic of the crew from a musical group to more of a business and label. Most of the Pro Era artists embraced this change and had their future releases under the Pro Era Records umbrella, but some of them didn't want to be tied down to a label like that, and it caused a few members to go their separate ways. Swankmaster Raw and Diamond Lewis left the group in early 2016, and Tina Apex left around the same time, but that didn't stop the remaining members from keeping Pro Era alive. In 2016, Aaron Rose released his Elixir EP, CJ Fly dropped Flytrap, Kirk Knight dropped 2 instrumental projects, and Nick Caution had Disguise the Limit, all to varying degrees of success. Many of the group's members released great albums in 2017 as well, but that year would be a letdown for many fans, because they announced a new Pro Era group album that would never come out, and they also had a posthumous Capital STEEZ album called King Capital that was scheduled to drop, but was cancelled at the last minute due to some behind-the-scenes business. At this point it looked like Pro Era had run its course, but they still had one trick up their sleeve. In May of 2019, Pro Era teamed up with the Flatbush Zombies and the Underachievers to officially form the Beast Coast once and for all, releasing the album Escape from New York. This project is very underrated, and highlighted so much of what the early Beast Coast era represented for rap fans. Joey Badass, CJ Fly, Kirk Knight, and Nick Caution all made appearances on the album, and even though it was cool hearing the Pro Era boys back together, it did feel a little bit like they were missing something. With any group that big, Pro Era had too many artists with too many different agendas, and it ended up making the Pro Era mission much less focused than they were when they originally came out. Most of the Pro Era artists are still putting out music consistently to this day, and even though the group may not have defined the progressive era for hip-hop like they once thought, they definitely made their mark on hip-hop history. To anyone around my age who was falling in love with hip-hop in the early 2010s, Pro Era meant so much to us. Even if it was for a short time, they carried on what the Native Tongues and the Wu-Tang Clan did before them, and I can't wait to see what the next progressive era for New York will be. Long live capital STEEZ. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let me know down in the comments what are your thoughts of Pro Era. Were you listening to them back in 2012? This video was voted on by my patrons, so if you want to vote on next month's video topic, then head over to patreon.com/DefGoldblum. As always, I got a lot of great videos planned for you guys coming up, so stay tuned, stay safe, and stay def. Thanks for watching.